to Root TV 2020 episode 15. I am here on this beautiful, I don't even remember what day it is anymore. The days all blend together. I think it's Friday. It could be Saturday. I don't even know. It could be Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. But my guest on this summer evening tonight is a very prominent name from my childhood and hopefully your childhood too. A very memorable name you won't soon forget. You won't ever forget, of course. Duke the Dumpster Droese, aka Mike Droese. Mike, how the hell are you tonight?
I am great. Thank you very much for having me on your show. And I think it's Saturday. I don't know what day it is either, but you're not alone on that. It could be any day of the week at this point. But
I don't even know.
It is a hot summer day. I know that much.
Yeah. So that the temperature kind of helps me out a little bit. Otherwise, I think it's maybe November. I don't know. Everything blends together. But speaking of weather, you're in as memory serves, Mike. You're in Mount Trashmore, Florida. How's the weather in Mount Trashmore?
Well, I haven't been in Mount Trashmore, Florida, in a long time. But it's funny. I think there's a lot of Mount Trashmores strewn throughout the country, if you will. Excuse the pun. This was a landfill down in Homestead, Florida, which was basically ground zero for Hurricane Andrew in '92. But Homestead, really? Florida had this giant landfill, and when you drove by it during the perfect or imperfect weather conditions on the turnpike, you would smell it real bad. But that was where the name came from, Mount Trashmore, Florida. That was my origin when I was wrestling down in Florida and when I went to work for Vince.
Right. Yeah. And for people who don't know, who just remember Mike from as Duke the Dumpster Droese, his character name before that was Rocco Gibraltar, I believe, right?
That's it. The garbage man, Rocco Gibraltar.
So here's a question I want to ask you before we get into this, before I forget, because it might slip my mind when we get up to that. But if you kind of claimed the trash man character as, the name, of course, Duke the Dumpster Droese is Vince's, but Rocco Gibraltar, if you were to go elsewhere, let's say in '97 you went to WCW, like you had a little tryout there, could you have used Rocco? You think you would have used Rocco Gibraltar, the trash man, or something like that? You think, or you think you would have been with just Mike Droese?
Well, I actually had the occasion to pitch it to Kevin Sullivan at WCW when I went. I had a tryout in 1998. I had a tryout, and it's on YouTube somewhere, but it doesn't have my name on it because I don't think whoever posted it knew it was me. I was wearing a singlet. But before that, I went and talked to Kevin Sullivan, who was the booker at the time, sort of still, at the Universal Studios where they were doing those tapings.
TV tapings there, right? Yeah.
I pitched him like 3 or 4 ideas, actually. That was one of them. I told him, I said, I own the garbage man thing. And, he didn't seem interested. I don't think they were interested in that. Yeah. One of the other ones, though, I pitched him, which was not my original idea, was to do a free agent gimmick, like Randy Macho Man Savage, come in and have a bunch of managers kind of vying for my services and wanting to hire me. And he really liked that idea. And then probably a week later, I saw Kurt Hennig come walking out and tell Mean Gene he was a free agent.
Remember that, '97.
And again, it wasn't my idea, but it was just interesting that how they used it for somebody else. But that's the way that business is they'll just eat your ideas up and people steal ideas all the time. That's just kind of the way it is. Steal moves, steal everything. So
absolutely. Now our timeline of the Duke character is all out of whack, but I really don't care. I want to get these questions in. This is something I was thinking about. Maybe you were pondering it too at the time, since we're talking about that time period of post WWE. Did you ever think of contacting Paul Heyman? Because Paul was notorious back then for kind of resurrecting careers that maybe Vince didn't really should have done more with, but he didn't end up doing it. Sort of like what they did with Al Snow, what they did with just PJ as Just Incredible. Did you ever think about working for Paul?
At that time, I did not. Interestingly, during that time when I left, 96, 97-ish, around that time, going in 98, a lot of the guys that worked for probably WCW and WWF at the time did not really respect that company as real wrestling.
Yeah, hardcore.
We would watch that stuff and think these guys are killing themselves and they're not even making money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now hindsight being 2020, just like you said, I could have resurrected the career, and got another shot somewhere out of it, just like Steve Austin did. I mean, he got to the WWF by way of ECW, but I wasn't thinking of it in those terms. It was basically the two big ones, and during that time, WCW was still beating Vince, and I was thinking that's where things were going anyway, and that's where I wanted to try and go. Just unfortunately, it didn't work out. I don't think Eric Bischoff had any interest in me, or Kevin Sullivan, or any of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion, as a fan, I was much younger watching your work back then, and I thought your timing, your in-ring work was pretty damn good. I mean, and one of the things I was rewatching a little bit of your work, and the little nuances that I noticed, the things like, and something I saw in another interview you said you could work on, ring psychology and things like that, but selling, it's something that I find certain people don't do enough of today, and I shouldn't be talking because I'm sitting behind a computer. I get it, but I'll give you one example. If anybody at home goes back and watches the match that Mike had with Triple H, watch how he throws punches, and after he throws a punch, it's little shit like this that I notice. And after you throw the punch, you kind of like sell it as if you were fighting Paul in real life, it would hurt your hand, right? Yeah. So, like, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, like, everyone from, like, the young kids today to even Hogan in the 80s never did this. It's like these little things, like, stuff like that, selling like that. Like, where were you taught stuff like that, or did you just kind of, like, think of that stuff on your own?
I learned stuff like that from a bunch of places, but I'll say my punches in general, two places. One was the guy that trained me, the Jamaican Jammer, Bobby Wales, down in Florida, Miami, Florida, Opelika, Florida, actually. But he trained me, and also Norman Smiley came through our school for a while.
Oh, okay, Norman, yeah.
But he taught me punches. And another one, we were doing a tour during my early years. It was literally my second, third, and like fourth matches ever. I was like 18 or 19 years old. But we had a whole cart of guys that went down to the Bahamas, and we had Ox Baker, we had Tiger Conway Jr., we had Bugsy McGraw. It was during those years. And Bugsy pulled me aside and taught me how to throw punches. One thing he always said was throw from up to down. That's why if you always watch my punches, I'm up high and I come down. And Bobby also taught me that way. And then I think it was also Bugsy McGraw that taught me the little things. He was like, if you're punching somebody in the face like that, it's going to hurt your hand. So what should you do to show the crowd that? And because it makes a difference, it makes it more believable. So, just those are the kinds of things I would pick up from older guys and veterans along my way up, slowly working my way up the path, during those early years.
No, absolutely. And a name that comes to mind that would sell sort of like that, very similar, would be Jerry Lawler. And of course you've covered this in other interviews, but I'd be remiss if I glazed over it. That segment from 94, I think when you came in, 94, I think it was, on Raw with King. For those of you who don't know, you can pull it up on the network. They did a King's Court, and basically Duke got attacked after during the segment by King from behind. Can you talk a little bit about that? And more specifically, once you kind of cliff notes, bottom line it real quick, who was so upset about this? I mean, to me, I'm watching this, I'm like, what the hell are they going to be up? So why would they have heat about this? It's just the trash can to the back. Tell us a little bit about that segment and why they were so pissed at it.
Well, the segment came about because on my debut, which was on the show Superstars, I wrestled a guy named Mike Bell. And as I came out to the ring on my very first match, Jerry Lawler was standing there like he was wanting to interview me.
Okay.
And I walked up like respectfully and agreed to do an interview. And then he pulled out a clothespin and put it on his nose like a big joke, like I stunk, right? So I grabbed my garbage can, which was full of garbage at that time, and I dumped it over his head. And that in turn pissed him off. So then we jump forward to Raw, King's Court. We do the interview. He's complaining about that whole deal. He's he's insulting me. He's insulting Bret Hart, of all people, and his family. He won't let me in the ring. And finally, I get sick of it and leave. And then he charges from out, and this is on Live Raw, by the way. He charges me from behind and hits me. What he does is he clubs me with a forearm to the back of the shoulder blades. And I go down and I sell, and I turn to him and feed him my head. And he didn't hit me across the back. He hit me right square in the head. And that was the shot they got live on TV.
Yeah, right.
And immediately, I'm sure Kevin Dunn in the truck freaked out. And they, wham, they pulled it back to a far angle where you couldn't see him actually hitting me anymore. They wouldn't show it. During those days, it was the original, it was still during that original cartoonish PG era. It was geared towards kids and family entertainment. And it was too violent for them. So when I came to the back, there was just this vibe in the back. People were kind of moving around, scurrying around a little bit. And, Shane McMahon was the one that came up to me, and he was like, what the hell happened? And the thing was, me and Jerry talked about it before, and it was Jerry's idea, and I agreed to it. And the agent in charge was Jack Lanza. He said, go ahead, just do it. On TV. So he was like, you should, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask permission. He said it backwards, of course. But so we did it. And I think that was one of many, many times where I just caught heat inadvertently from the office.
And you know what, Mike, it's like you would think, and I'm going to ask you what he thought of this in a second, but you would think, it was, rewatching it even today, it holds up as a good piece of business. I mean, it had heat. Of course, they didn't follow it up. That's a whole nother can of worms. But Vince knows something. I mean, when something is money, Vince McMahon should, especially back then, he was more in touch with the product, people want to see back then. Was Vince himself kind of aggravated, or was he more kind of, because it sounds like, when you tell the story, it sounds like the agents were pissed. It sounds like, Shane said, what the hell was that? But was Vince himself kind of like,
well, he never expressed it to me. But of course he sends his henchmen to come talk to you.
Of course, political,
But I just, knowing, again, hindsight being 20, knowing what I know now. When I was there and it was in the beginning, and I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to step on any toes. I was trying to be very careful and not piss anybody off and being very apologetic for everything. But knowing what I know now, just like you said, that was a good piece of business. And I would have pled my case to the judge himself on that one, Vince McMahon, and said, listen, we got something hot here. Don't squash it because it was too violent. Now we can go from here forward and not go as violent, but don't squash it because of that, And of course I had no idea what they were going to do. I mean, then they had Jerry Lawler do this stupid apology taped on Superstars. And it was just, it made comedy out of it. And I was just like shaking my head. I remember I was sitting at home going, why are they doing that? And we didn't even get a pay-per-view out of it. Like you said, and they just did nothing with it.
Yeah, no, and it's not, and people can plainly see that was 94, a couple years later, and they went full, TV 14, you were going to call it, with dumpster matches and
exactly,
and all that, and all those gimmicks. Basically, I don't want to say they ripped off ECW, but they definitely were influenced by that hardcore style after that. And to see that,
saw what was happening over there in Philadelphia, and they realized it was hot.
Absolutely.
And the fans were changing. The fans were getting smarter, so they had to do something. And they started changing to more of that style. You're absolutely right.
So we just talked about Vince. I want to segue into a question that I've been wondering about this. A lot of workers from your era dealt with this. Vince, clearly, everybody knows he's the man in charge. He's the man behind the curtain. But during that era, and prior to, he stopped during the Attitude Era, he would sit at ringside and call the matches. I know just from a normal job, if my boss was sitting there in the same room watching me do my job, especially a person like Vince McMahon, I would be a little bit anxious or a little bit kind of like, well, I want to prove myself, but I'd also be like, damn, he's just watching me. Did you feel any uncomfortableness or anything, any kind of, when you were working and Vince is sitting 30 feet away at a table watching everything. He's calling the match. Now he's calling the match, but in his head, if you F up or if you do something he doesn't like, he's clearly he would see it anyway from Gorilla. But I don't know. It's just, to me, I've always thought that was weird. How did you feel about working like that?
Well, the thing about Vince calling things from ringside, he only did that during live Raw. So everything else was done in the studio. They would do voiceover.
Really? Okay.
Studio, so he really wouldn't be out there
right.
unless they were doing live to tape. They did that every so often. They would do a Superstars that was what they called live to tape. It was like we were doing it live, but it wasn't going out live, but it was going somewhere live, like to a studio or something. I don't know, but
yeah.
Other than that, he wasn't at ringside. But still, the pressure of working there in general, yes, you were constantly under pressure, but you got there for a reason. You were either one of the best wherever you came from, and you deserved to be there. And when you walked out that curtain, you turned it on, or you didn't. And if you didn't last long.
No, absolutely. Especially in that era. You got the roster was so stacked. Even though business was down, I mean, look at that roster.
A lot of great workers. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah. So I speaking of Vince himself and how things operated back then as compared to now. Now I hear stories about things of how accessible Vince is now. Now I don't know. And I know you've said in the past how maybe you've made a mistake of kind of getting into Vince's ear when you shouldn't have. Maybe Brett kind of edged you to do that, to call him. I hear today that there's workers who work there go through like an entire run and talk to Vince once, or maybe it's like or they're sitting out there for 7 hours on a TV box outside his fake office and in TV. And to get 5 minutes with him, how his accessibility back then? Was he
pretty good? I mean, of course, it was a lot smaller, man. It was still a mom and pop store, if you think about it that way. It was a family owned company. Now it's this massive publicly traded conglomerate, publicly traded company, and there's a lot more people to go through. And I'm sure he is a lot less accessible. And there's more people that are calling shots now than just him.
Right.
I'm sure he will lay a certain amount of it at the feet of Triple H or Stephanie or whomever else. I'm sure we didn't have writers. We didn't have writers then. We had agents, and they would give you a finish, but nobody wrote anything for anybody. Now people are politicking with the writers, because if a writer writes you into something, then you're on TV, apparently. So it's just a different structure now. But Vince was accessible when I was there. You could get you could get on that line and sit on a TV box and wait your turn, for sure, in the pecking order to talk to him. And he would give you some time, and he would talk to you if he had time. He was always nice about talking to me. Of course, at the end there, I think he was just aggravated with me, and and all that stuff with Brett. I talk about that often. He wound me up, made me do. Well, he didn't make me do anything, but he gave me interesting advice, probably advice that a champion could use, but not like a opening match mid-card Duke the Dumpster. And he wound me up some, and I became annoying, and because I was becoming disillusioned by 95, 96. I was pissed off, and you got to have thick skin in that business, and I didn't, so that was part of the problem.
Yeah, and I know you've said in the past that maybe you should have taken the advice of another bald-headed gentleman. I don't know if at the time he was bald-headed. I think he was. Steve
Austin.
Yeah, he was kind of giving you the opposite.
He was
giving
me great advice. He just wasn't a champion at the time, so I didn't think his advice had as much merit as Bret Hart's.
Well, Bret
Hart at that point, I think, was there 14 years.
Right.
Steve was just coming in, and but Steve was giving me advice as my friend.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that, and I didn't think Steve was steering me wrong. I just thought Bret was giving me the good advice because he was the champ. My vision got clouded with all that nonsense.
So, was Bret's brother Owen friendly to you, or was he a rib? Well, he was a notorious ribber, but did he?
Oh, he ribbed everybody, but Owen was a great guy. Owen was a class individual, a quality human being. That's the way I like to put it. and I always give this example. I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I left the company, and I went and tried out for WCW, and I came back and tried out again. They made me try out for the WWF again when I came back in '98.
Really?
They made me try out again. That was hilarious. But as I was there waiting for the show to start, we're all standing out kind of near the ring or milling around the building, and Owen was back by the curtain somewhere, and he just struck up a conversation with me. And at that time, of course, was the Vince Russo era.
Yeah.
And Attitude Era. And
right. Yep.
Owen pulled me aside and he gave me a piece of advice. He said, listen, you need to get with Vince Russo.
Yeah.
If you can get Vince Russo on your side, you're gonna have stuff to do here, and things will go well. And I just remember thinking, because when I left, Vince Russo was just the editor of the magazine.
Magazine writer, yeah.
I mean, he wrote some good stories for me, and he had interest in helping me, but I was thinking, why Vince Russo? I just didn't put it together. I was so clueless, man, during those years, especially because I was out of my mind, man. I was doing drugs, painkillers, and all this stupid shit. So my thinking was clouded, and I just didn't get it in a lot of ways. And that was one of those instances where I recognized much later in life that Owen was really trying to help me. Owen was a really nice person. He had a good heart. He pulled funny ribs that were harmless. He had fun. He always made the locker room fun, and he always made in the ring fun. If you had to wrestle him in the ring, chances are he was going to make you and the referee laugh because he always did something. And so he was always fun to be around, and he was sorely missed. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that was a sad loss. I remember that vividly. But you talk a little bit about we're talking a little bit about Owen and funny moments and things like that. You had brought. I want my viewers to hear this story. I thought it was hilarious the first time I heard it. Something about after a show, Bob Backlund was at a bar drinking a beverage from a cow or something. I don't know. Tell me a little bit.
It was out on the West Coast. It wasn't on the West Coast, but it was somewhere like some city that we didn't do very often, like somewhere in Colorado or like in Arizona. Yeah. Or maybe even in the state of Washington, maybe, I think, now that I think about it. But I wrestled Bob that night.
Okay. Oh, really?
And I didn't wrestle him very often, but I wrestled Bob that night. And so, going out to the bar, I expect to see the normal cast of characters, all the guys that like to get drunk or maybe do a little this and that, pills,
click,
whatever.
The click, of course, yeah.
And I look down the bar and I see, by God, Bob Backlund. And he's drinking a glass of milk at the bar with fans surrounding him because the fans were just as shocked to see him there. Mm-hmm. And, this was at a point in the business where it was in between still kayfabe and not kayfabe.
Right.
And I was more on the side of not kayfabe.
Right.
Because the fans were smart. But, obviously Bob Backlund was old school, man.
Yeah.
But I walked up to him and said, "Hey, Bob, how's it going, man? It's so good to see you out here." And he turned around, and he looked at me, and he screamed as loud as he could, "Get away from me!" He started looking at me. He started doing that deal with his hands. And I was thinking, this son of a bitch is cutting a promo on me in the bar. And I was embarrassed. I felt like that big. I went, oh, my God. I just turned and moped away like this. I felt so stupid. I should have never walked up to him, man. He's totally old school, of course, and I should have respected that. And again, I file that under completely clueless, which I was a lot of times back in those days.
Yeah. No, he's a character. I met him one time.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
very intelligent too.
Absolutely, and he comes off as a nice guy. I remember I had it. He was one of my favorites. I had to get a picture with him, and I requested that he put me in the cross-faced chicken wing for the picture.
Yep.
And let me tell you,
he didn't put it on light, did he?
He cinched that. He
made you earn that.
Oh,
that's Bob.
Yep. My rotator cuff is feeling it today, I think, like 6-7 years later.
That's something to remember him by.
Yep. Oh, yeah. He made sure. That's for sure. But now, many people might not know this, but Duke, you suffered, and we talked about your issues with addiction and all that. But I don't really get too much into that. But there's something that a lot of fans who remember you from the days in the 90s don't know, is that you had I believe your left or right leg amputated right after
my left foot leg, just below the calf.
Left foot. I'm sorry.
And it was an old wrestling injury, actually. It's funny. And it was from probably about the time when I was wrestling Triple H.
Yeah.
We did a lot of spots where I'd go run. And I remember one time in particular, after he cut my hair on Superstars, and I came charging out the next match when he had a match and chased him. During those times, I was wearing high-tech Magnum boots, and those are not wrestling boots.
Right.
And they're very loose. Real wrestling boots have really good support on your ankles. These did not. And I twisted the hell out of both my ankles, especially my left one. And I twisted it over and over and over again until I could finally get a new pair of real boots. Mm-hmm. But years and years and years later, I'm working out in the gym trying to get in shape, and my foot just collapses. It starts to fall apart, and it got real bad. And that's when I relapsed and started taking pills again. And it was probably about 2009, 2010. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point where I started being more worried about finding pills than getting my foot fixed, and I waited way too long. And then when I finally got it fixed, I was still worried about getting more pills and not following doctor's orders, and it fell apart. And then I went back for a second surgery a couple years later, and I tried to follow directions, but I was still running around getting drugs. Yeah. And it got a nasty staph infection deep inside of it. And at that point, I had been so miserable in pain for a couple of years. Yeah. And the doctors said, we can either take the foot, but he said, I can fuse it all together, clean it up, no guarantees, but you'll still be in a lot of pain. Or if we take the foot, amputate it, and get you fit with a good prosthetic leg, once you get used to it, you'll be out of pain. And that sounded good to me, believe it or not. And of course, again, I'm way out of my mind on drugs, but it was not as easy as they made it sound at all. And it's been a difficult time. Matter of fact, I'm dealing with something right now. I had an infection on the end of it. They call it a stump, obviously. Right. I had an infection I had an operation back in November of last year. Okay. I still don't have a new leg. It's still finishing healing up. Really? I had a couple setbacks. I had a bacteria set up inside of it and stuff, and I had been cleaning the hell out of it. Yeah. But it just goes to show you never know. But it's getting better now. There's been a lot of challenges with it, but it was a very hard lesson to learn. I think it's one of those difficult lessons that made me what I am, though, now. I've been through a lot, and this is one of the big ones. But it taught me a lot about myself, and also about how much pain I could endure without having to take pills, because they don't tell you when you get your leg amputated and you got to squeeze it into a prosthesis. Yeah. It hurts like hell the first time, because your leg, your all the muscle and stuff has to, basically shrink and disintegrate. And, it was a very painful process walking around on that first leg. Very painful. I mean, I used to have to say to myself out loud, I was not going to use drugs over this. Of course, I was in drug court too, because I had got charges and all that stuff. But right. It was difficult. It was a tough lesson.
Yeah, no, man, Mike, it's I'm glad you're coming along with that. But I was kind of doing my research on that whole situation, and then I find last year, and I don't know if this is I was stunned. As a matter of fact, I was watching it last night. I was like, this is Mike's freaking Randy the Ram moment. I'm watching this. You worked an indie match last year with the prosthetic.
Yeah, I worked a bunch of them. And,
it was more than just the one.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, Jesus.
Yeah, I got back in the ring and started wrestling. That was part of the reason I got an infection, because I started blunt trauma on the end of the stump inside of the prosthetic. When I would go out of the ring and land on the ground, it would stomp the ground and push it. Anyway, I got an abscess on the end of it, and it got infected. So there probably won't be any actual wrestling matches anymore. I may do run-ins or actual walk-ins where I hit somebody in the head with a can, maybe, like I did when I first started back. That's all. And I'll do autograph sessions and meet and greets. But no, I'm not going to get in and wrestle no more matches, man. I learned my lesson there. I'm old. I'm old. 51 years old, almost 52. That's old in wrestling years.
Kidding me? 52.
I need to stay out of wrestling matches. Yeah. I mean, I go to the gym. I try to stay in pretty good shape, but I don't need to get in the wrestling ring no more.
Yeah. Well, 52 is the new 37, I think. So, Flair worked till he was
well, I ain't Flair.
I don't know, Mike, but there's something I wanted to talk about real quick, and it was the fact that you know I've never been into business, but I'm gonna kind of brainstorm. If I had the pencil, I don't know how the hell they didn't turn you. Well, wait, two things I want to say. I don't know how the hell they didn't turn you heel and have you join DiBiase's corporation in 94, 95. That seemed like a no-brainer to have the trash man who's working class getting low wages. I think the trash men actually make pretty decent wages, but just for for argument's sake, he sells out to go to DiBiase. You have a whole different career. By the way, side note, my shoot last name is DiBiase. I'm not related to him, but wish I was. Maybe get thrown some money. But yeah, but yeah. And then was there any talk about turning you heel? Because for me, the character arc, as they like to say in movies and TV, of Duke to Dumpster Droese would have been to if you want to make money with the character Vince, turn him heel. And was there any talk about that? Like maybe joining?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it was with DiBiase.
Okay.
In fact, it was back in those years when Vince Russo was the magazine editor. He actually did a big article where it showed me walking the streets of Philadelphia, kind of all the places from the Rocky movie.
Sure.
And I was thinking about stuff. You could tell I was thinking about turning heel is what it was. And in the end, there was a picture of me at a photo shoot, and I was wearing a suit. And off to the side on the corner was DiBiase looking around the corner, because that was the plan. They were going to turn me heel, put me with DiBiase, kind of make me his protege.
Yeah.
Maybe a la Ringmaster, who came later.
Right.
I don't know, but I would definitely have not done it as well as Steve Austin.
Yeah.
But that was the plan, and it just kind of sputtered out, man. And, sometimes these plans, they try to put them together, and maybe part of the talent's not interested in doing it, or somebody leaves. I don't know. DiBiase left not too long after that, so things kind of changed. But yeah, they ended up not going with it, and that was one of the other reasons I just kind of got disillusioned and angry.
Yeah, no, you if they would have went.
That was the whole point of me cutting my hair. I wanted to change my image.
Yeah, I remember. I rewatched that Triple H match, and you had all new gear and everything. And I think he had said you had kind of did that with that intent of kind of a new start for the character.
They just kind of stalled it.
Yeah,
and then they just put me right back to getting beat by all the new heels that came in. Now maybe they would have just used me up as a babyface, but it didn't make sense to me that. All right, I just made this big change, and now you're going to kill me for a little while before you try to push me as a heel. That would make no sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just it was aggravating all the way around. And that, of course, that's when I started doing the pills, and I wasn't thinking clearly, and I was just angry at the world. So
no, I hear you.
It didn't last too much longer after that.
And speaking of all that, Mike, before we get out of here tonight, and that's a good segue into the last thing I wanted to talk about. You kind of powdered out. You left the scene right sort of before the Attitude Era, and you've made mention of this in other interviews, but I think it would be fitting because I feel like things happen for a reason. And talk about why you feel that maybe it's better off that you didn't maybe sign or re-sign or in '98 during the Attitude Era. And
well, the interesting thing about it was I left and business started taking off.
Yeah,
so I'm sitting
going
home
crazy.
And now, mind you, I got a nasty drug habit. I'm taking like 60 pills a day. I'm doing massive amounts of cocaine. I'm drinking alcohol every night. I'm killing myself.
Yeah.
But I get a phone call about a year after I left. I got a phone call from Savio Vega informing me that they sent out a memo saying they weren't drug testing anymore. And I just remember thinking to myself, ooh, that's probably not good. But I continued to watch, and I had a lot of regrets for a long time as I watched the Attitude Era take off because I missed out on all of that. I felt like I could have made a lot of money. I could have done a lot of great things during that era.
Sure.
But as I moved on in life, and I look back and I realized a lot of things, especially with the issues coming full circle with my drug addiction and stuff and being in recovery, I realized if I was there when they weren't drug testing, I would have been one of those 60 or 70 or 80 guys that died within like a 10-year period during that era. There was a ton of guys that died. And it was in large part because they kind of just let the reins go on the boys. Like, here you go. You know, it went from guys abusing narcotic medications that they got from doctors, which you didn't really have to get from a doctor, but to using drugs, illegal drugs. People were shooting up Nubane or heroin and using methamphetamine before they'd go out to matches. Man, knowing myself now the way I do, and the absolute zero amount of control I have with drugs and alcohol, I would have been a statistic. So, like you said, things happen for a reason, I guess. You know, I look back now and I don't regret it anymore. Again, I'm at peace with where I'm at. I'm happy where I am now, and it's not a big deal. I just wasn't one of the rich, famous guys that went through that era, and it is what it is. But I'm still here and I'm still alive, and now I actually get to do something I'm passionate about, which is help people.
Absolutely. You know, that's the bottom line, and very happy you're here talking to us, Mike, because that's you know, like I said, everything happens for a reason. And today, man, I think if you take if you take 4 Tylenols, you get flagged. I don't know. They're
I heard it's real strict, but that's good. They need to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it was that way before, I'm glad they're the opposite now. Before we get out of here, Mike, let's plug your shows you got on Facebook. I was watching last night with your co-host there. Where can we find
Klein?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. It was a fun show. Speaking of helping people, that was definitely a show where
I'm doing a show with Avi Klein. My show is called Road to Recovery, where we talk about recovery in a lot of different ways: substance abuse, alcohol abuse, but also just recovery from difficult situations. We talked about sex addiction this past week. The week before, we had Del Wilkes, the Patriot, on. He was telling his story. We are very fan interactive. The show is on Fridays. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is 5 p.m. Central, my time, on Friday, every Friday, with me and Avi Klein. And it falls under that umbrella of he's got a bunch of podcasts, and they're all under something called Wrestling with Anything But. That is his original podcast. Okay. And the Wrestling with Anything But family includes myself on Fridays, Ray Lloyd Glacier. He has Breaking the Ice on Mondays and Fridays at noon Eastern time. Let's see. Bill DeMott has Face Value. I just messed up his name again. I've done it the last 3 times I've said Bill DeMott's name, and I know him. Bill DeMott has Face Value at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays. Paul Roma, Maintaining the Truth, at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. And this was the cool one for me because I was just on it this week. Don Morocco.
Oh, wow.
Making Waves, Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I had the privilege and the honor of meeting Don Morocco, a guy I watched when I was coming up in the business. It was I marked that one off the bucket list, brother. It was one of the greatest things. Let me see. And, of course, Del Wilkes, the Patriot, he has one also on Sunday. It's called Unmasking the Truth. At 8 p.m. Eastern time. So this is a whole family of podcasts with a lot of guys from the past, a lot of wrestlers that people know. And Avi Klein is the master of ceremonies for all of it. But you can find all of this stuff on our Facebook pages. My Facebook page is simply Mike DROESE. That's where all the magic happens. Everybody comes, the fans and the stories and the live podcast tonight, or at least on Fridays, at 6 p.m. Central, which is 7 p.m. Eastern. I do a Trash Cam Live on my Facebook page, which a lot of people like to come check out. So, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Duke the Dumpster Official.
Gotcha.
On Instagram. Real Duke DROESE on Twitter. And I also have a fan page on Facebook, Duke the Dumpster Official as well. But like I said, all the magic happens on the private Facebook page that is open to the public. Just Mike DROESE. Come check it out. You can't miss it. It's awesome. And I appreciate it, man. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely check Mike out on Facebook. He's got a lot of fun stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. That's for damn sure.
Right.
About the backstage during that era. Mike, thank you so much for chatting with me tonight. I really appreciate it, brother.
All right. I really appreciate you having me on the show, man. It's been great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for everybody watching at home, thank you very much. And stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you all real soon. Cheers, guys. Take care.